welcome back to FranklinCovey's twice weekly podcast on leadership with Scott Miller. That's me each week, twice a week actually, on Tuesdays and Fridays. I am privileged on behalf of FranklinCovey to host this podcast, now the world's largest weekly leadership podcast, 6 years and 400 plus episodes taped, where FranklinCovey, as you know, the world's most trusted leadership company, spotlights what we think are people with like-minded values and experiences similar to FranklinCovey to help make you a better leader. Our founder, of course, was Dr. Stephen R. Covey. He was the author behind the seminal book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And for 4 decades, FranklinCovey has helped organizations and individuals everywhere achieve greatness as defined by them. I am privileged to now have been in this chair for 6 years, and one of the best parts of being a podcast is I get to meet cool people, both in person and virtually. And I've been chasing today's guest for quite some time because I will tell you, there is something that is consistent about many of the people that I've had the privilege to interview and meet in this podcast. One consistent theme of all of our guests is they have what I would call as an indefatigable work ethic. Yes, in fact, hard work is still a thing, and it's interesting whether they're a best-selling author, a business titan, an academic, a researcher, or they're an artist or creator, they generally outwork most everyone else. It's a commonality. It's a principle I think is very relevant still in 2024. Another commonality is they're voracious readers. Readers are leaders, and it's interesting when I have asked disproportionately these 400 plus influential, successful, highly effective guests, they typically say they have read one of 3 books that transformed their life. Now, this is the cream of the crop, the most influential leaders in the world I've been privileged to interview. They say either they read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, they read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by our co-founder, Dr. Stephen R. Covey, or they read the book that is most associated with today's guest, The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Hal is our guest today. He is the author of the book, The Miracle Morning, sold nearly 3 million copies, translated into 42 languages around the world. Get ready to change your life in your morning. Hal, welcome to On Leadership.
Scott, I did not know I was in that very elite 3 recommended books. So I'm still processing that right now. So you ask whatever you want.
Well, it's very accurate. I mean, I can tell you empirically, when I ask people what is the most influential book in their life, and these are super producers, these are people of extraordinary influence or net worth for that matter, or impact in their work, your book is constantly one of those 3 that come up. Hal, welcome to our podcast. Delighted to have you today. Would you rewind a couple of decades and share maybe your personal and professional journey? Your life has not been a complete miracle. There's been ups and downs. You certainly have had setbacks. Would love to, if you're willing, to share some of the triumphs and setbacks you have faced. Maybe reintroduce yourself, and we'll talk about some of the concepts of creating a miracle morning.
Yeah, Scott, I appreciate so much this opportunity. And I think I'll start at 8 years old. My baby sister, Amory, died in front of me one morning. I woke up to my mother screaming across the hall, and my sister had died of heart failure. And she'd been born with a very rare heart condition, but we were hoping that she would live a long, healthy life. And at 18 months old, she passed away. And the power of that experience, of course, it was tragic, and it was, tore my mom and dad apart. But within 6 months, my mother was leading a support group for other parents who had lost children. And my dad was leading a fundraiser to raise money for the hospital that our family was involved in every year until I turned 18 and went off to college. And so the lesson was, when tragedy strikes, that you find purpose in it. You find a way to help other people. Now, fast forward to 12 years later, I was one of the top sales reps for Cutco Cutlery, and I'd given a speech at a Cutco conference, and driving home at 20 years old, my car was hit head-on by a drunk driver at 70 miles per hour. Another vehicle crashed into my driver's side door at 70 miles per hour, and I was found dead at the scene. My heart stopped for 6 minutes. I was in a coma for 6 days. I flatlined twice more in the coma. And when I woke up, I was told that I had permanent brain damage and that I would never walk again. And I really took that lesson from my mom and dad, which is like, how can I use this experience, this tragedy, to help other people? And I focused on everything that I wanted, which is I want to walk again. I'm going to maintain unwavering faith, despite what the doctors tell me. I believe that I can walk again. I'm going to maintain faith that I can. And 2 weeks later, I took my first step, kind of to dismay that, doctors couldn't believe it. And then I went on to take that experience. And to this day, I still give speeches about my car accident, but I started speaking at high schools and colleges when I was 20 and sharing how they could overcome any challenge that they faced and turn a tragedy into a triumph and never let their past be an excuse as to why they couldn't dictate and create the future that they wanted.
Okay, keep going. And then what? You've also had some other things happen in your life that have been maybe in the moments, traumas or tragedies that you've discerned how to view them as blessings or opportunities for learning. There's been some more that's happened in your life.
Yeah. So the car accident was at age 20. You fast forward, I think, roughly 8 years, and the 2008 financial crisis took place, and I was such an optimistic, positive person that I ignored it. I wasn't worried about it. I thought I remember I literally told a friend, he goes, "Hey, aren't you worried about the economy and how that's going to affect your business?" And I said, "I create my own economy," I say there's a fine line between optimism and delusion, right? And I cross it often, but that was a really sobering experience because within 6 months of that statement, I had lost over half of my clients, over half of my income. I could not pay my bills. I went living on credit cards. My house was foreclosed on. So I went from, the American dream, I just bought my first home a few years prior, to now the bank's taking it away. I'm deep in credit card debt. I've ruined my credit. I'm financially, physically, mentally, and emotionally at the lowest point in my life. And a series of events, actually a quote, I should say, a single quote from Jim Rohn changed my life. It is what gave birth to the Miracle Morning. Jim Rohn said, "Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development because success is something you attract by the person you become." And the epiphany was, wait a minute, I don't have a daily personal development ritual that's enabling me to become the person that I need to be to create the success that I wanted. And I went online and I Googled, what do the world's most successful people do for their personal development? I assembled the 6 most timeless proven practices, woke up the next morning, and my life changed so fast, it felt like a miracle. I know we're going to unpack that and what those practices are, but that's where the Miracle Morning was born. And the last adversity I'll share, the last major one, occurred when I was 37 years old. So 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with a rare aggressive form of cancer, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and that cancer has a 20% survival rate. So as a father at the time with a 7-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son, I was told there was a 70 to 80% chance that I was going to die in the coming months. And nothing in my life had prepared me for that moment. I mean, granted the car accident, but I had never had so much to lose, right? I wasn't a dad when I was 20 and had that experience. Now I had a family. And I applied the same approach of unwavering faith and extraordinary effort to, and used my Miracle Morning to literally save my life. I applied all 6 of the Miracle Morning practices to beating cancer. And within 2 months, again, kind of defying the logic of doctors, I was in remission. And we made a movie about it. And I wrote another book, and so all of this to me, it's kind of knock on wood that I'm like, I hope I'm done with these major life-threatening adversities, but I do feel like no matter what we go through, the more difficult the adversity, the greater the opportunity for us to learn, grow, and become a better version on the other side of whatever we face.
It's incomprehensible listening to your story, but I think it's enormously valuable for us, like me, that have not had anywhere near the challenges or setbacks you have, that wallow in our perceived setbacks or challenges or crises. I'm looking forward to our conversation around how we can create control over our mornings to set up our days for the success we want to attract. Hal, your book is The Miracle Morning, the not so obvious secret guaranteed to transform your life before 8 a.m. This book has sold nearly 3 million copies. It is translated, like I said in the opening, to 42 languages, and there are 14 versions of this book in your Miracle Morning series for entrepreneurs, for families, real estate agents, salespeople, teachers, millionaires, addiction recovery, etc. Let's talk about, there are 3 steps to begin your miracle morning. There is a kit, there is a schedule, and there's your alarm. Will you just talk simply about what these 3 steps are? Obviously, there's more to the book than this, but I found this very practical.
Yeah, the essence of the miracle morning is that how you start your day sets the tone, the context, and the direction for the rest of your day, right? This is not that you have to wake up at 5 a.m. I'm a big fan of Robin Sharma. I love the 5 a.m. club, but you could start your miracle morning at 7:30 or, whenever it is that before you get up. The general idea is most of us set our alarm for the last possible minute before we have to get ready and head out the door. And that puts us in a typically reactive state, right? We're reacting to the notifications on our phone and the emails in our inbox and the demands and the distractions that today's modern society is inundating us with. And so the miracle morning, the essence of it is waking up a little bit before that, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour, or there's even a chapter in the book called the 6-minute miracle morning for the days when you don't have a half an hour or an hour, but you still want to start your day with some personal development, some self-care, so you can start the day in a peak physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual state so that you can show up to work at your best. And that applies, of course, to each individual, but then for like an organization and, many of your listeners that might be in a leadership role, it's like, imagine the value if everyone in your organization started their day in the same way, where they started their day with a specific proven morning ritual that put them in that peak physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual state. And then they brought the best version of themselves to work. And so whether it's the individual or it's, the organization, all of us, by starting our day in an optimal way, set ourselves up to create excellent days, which of course lead to excellent results in the long run.
3 steps to begin your miracle morning. Step 1, get the Miracle Morning 30-Day Life Transformation Kit. Talk about that.
Got it. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear on what you were asking. I apologize. So miraclemorning.com, that's something that I created so that someone that maybe they didn't have $20 to buy a book, right? Or maybe they had too many books on their shelf and they're like, I don't have time to read the book, but I want to get started. So the Miracle Morning Fast Start Kit, it has 3 right? So if you like to read, there is the first few chapters of the book, a sneak peek of the book that gives you an overview of, okay, what's the miracle morning? How is it going to change your life? Which you'll have by the end of this interview, of course. The second is a 60-minute audio that I recorded to go deeper into the miracle morning for someone that wants to do that. And then the third is the Miracle Morning movie, or actually it was the video, now it's the movie. But basically, it's if you want to watch something on your lunch break that shows you what the miracle morning is and allows you to get started right away before the arrives from Amazon or whatever it is, just moving that alarm clock up 30 minutes and getting that start to the day. So that's essentially, those are 3 simple steps. That's part of the Fast Start Kit where you can watch the miracle morning, you can read the miracle morning, or you can listen to the miracle morning.
I like to talk practical tips for our listeners, so I'm going to keep going. Step 2, you call in the book, schedule your first miracle morning for tomorrow.
Yeah, and the idea is that, far too often we are perfectionists. We have an all or nothing mindset. You go, well, I'm going to wait till I finish the book. I want to make sure I understand all of it before I get started. And very often, right, we get to the end of a book and maybe you've got another book waiting. And so many people, you finish one book and you don't actually implement it. You just go, wow, I can check off the box that I read that book and feel accomplished. And now I'm going to read my next book. And so for me, or what I'm saying in that book is, no, move your alarm clock up 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes and start your miracle morning tomorrow. And all you have to do is one of the savers, the acronym SAVERS. Those are the 6 practices of the miracle morning. The R stands for reading. So for someone, they could do a miracle morning by simply waking up a little bit earlier and just doing the R and reading your miracle morning. And then when you get to the chapter on the first S, which is silence, you can do reading and then silence the next day. And then the A for affirmations and so on and so forth. So you can build your miracle morning over the time. But the idea is, don't wait to get started. Start immediately, and that'll create momentum that you can build upon.
Hal, your third step is set your alarm clock and move it across the room.
Yeah. So think about this. Most of us keep our alarm clock right next to the bed. It's within arm's reach, right? Whether you're traveling and you're in a hotel or you're at home, our alarm clock is typically on our nightstand, our bedside table, within arm's reach. And when the alarm goes off in the morning, I talk about what I call your morning motivation level, right? Like, how motivated are you to jump out of bed? And normally in those first few seconds when the alarm goes off, they might have caught you in a REM cycle, you're in deep sleep, you're out of it. And so trying to muster up the discipline to jump out of bed with energy and excitement, it's challenging. And most of us will hit that snooze button. And often we do it unconsciously, where we don't even realize, right? You'll snooze 2 or 3 times, then all of a sudden when you finally come to and you go, oh my gosh, I'm late now, I gotta get out of bed. So I found one of the most effective, simple strategies is to move your alarm clock as far across the room as it can be, and you can still hear it. For me, it's on my bathroom counter. And what that does is it simply forces you to get out of bed, to be upright, to move your body and walk to the alarm clock. And once you've done that, on a scale of 1 to 10, what I call your morning motivation level, right? It might have been at a 1 when the alarm sounded, but now it's probably at like a 3 or a 4, because you're up, you're moving. And it's far easier, it requires far less discipline to stay awake and keep that momentum going to complete your miracle morning than if you can reach over to your bedside table and hit that snooze button, ad nauseum.
Okay, let's get really practical. I am what I would call a self-described morning person. It's probably part of my epigenetics. It's probably part of my upbringing from my parents. They were early risers, and we were always early to bed, and I still am. But not everybody is. It was when I read Dan Pink's book, When, kind of the science of timing, where I learned more about this idea of your own circadian rhythm, right? My peak is 4 a.m. to about 10:30. My trough is about 10:30 to about 1 or 2. I'm not sleeping, I'm just not at my peak. And then my recovery is something like probably 1:30 to 4 or 5. My peak, my trough, my recovery. I'm guessing there are a lot of people that don't see themselves as, quote, a morning person, or their circadian rhythm or cycle is different. Talk about how the miracle morning works for people not like me, that aren't maybe automatically, mentally, psychologically, physically predisposed to get on and get up and get my morning started.
Yeah, it's a great question. So and that was probably my biggest concern writing the book, is how am I going to convince people that have believed for maybe their entire life that they are not a quote unquote morning person, that they can wake up earlier, that they should wake up earlier. And so I'll tell you this, that we have a global community of Miracle Morning practitioners, and whenever we send out a survey, which we usually do a few times a year, we always ask, before you read the Miracle Morning and applied the principles and the tactics, were you a morning person, or had you never thought you were a morning person, or could become one? And it's roughly 72% over the last 12 years of Miracle Morning practitioners that identified that they had never been a morning person, did not believe they didn't even want to, but a friend kept saying, you got to read this Miracle Morning book, so they finally just caved and did it. And now they do the Miracle Morning 5-6 days a week. I love the anecdote. Pat Flynn, who hosts the Smart Passive Income podcast. I admired Pat from a distance. I still admire Pat very much. He's one of the top podcasters in the world, and he's been doing it for, when I wrote the Miracle Morning in 2012, he already had his podcast. And I really wanted to be on his show because I listened and I loved that he was family first. He also was into fitness. He ran marathons, which I eventually got into, and he ran this successful podcast. And he was a self-identified night owl. And he did his best work at night, his most creative work at night. So when he had me on the show, he started by saying, Hal, I wake up in the morning not to an alarm, but to when my young children come shake me awake and say, Daddy, Daddy, time to get up. And he said, so I get my best work done at night, but I want to have you on to hear you out. I don't think, convince me that I should change what I'm doing. And I'm thinking, how am I going to convince this guy that has, he's a 7-figure entrepreneur. He's very successful. He runs marathons. He's a great family man. And he gets woken up by his children in the morning. How am I going to convince him that, no, you should forego the children waking you up and set an alarm for, half an hour before that or an hour before that? So anyway, I shared with him the Miracle Morning and made a case for why how you start your day sets the tone and the direction for the rest of your day. And Pat said, Hal, based on what you said, it makes sense. I might be missing being at my best throughout the day by not starting in this optimal way. He said, so I'm committed for 30 days to do the Miracle Morning, and I'll post about it every day and bring my community along with me. Pat, 30 days later, said, I am now a morning person. He said, I think he said that he increased his productivity. I'm not sure he measured it, but by 40% in those 30 days by waking up 30 to 60 minutes earlier. And he still does the Miracle Morning, over a decade later. So all of that is to say, right, with that 72% global statistic of people that do the Miracle Morning, never before considering themselves a morning person, and then Pat Flynn, right, this one example of someone who was highly successful and believed that the evening was his most productive time, but he committed, he thought, hey, it's worth it. I'm going to give it 30 days and try it and see what happens, and it ended up transforming his life. So if you're not a morning person or you don't think you're a morning person, A, join the club, B, give the Miracle Morning a try, and I think that you'll find that it will enhance your life, even if you still get some creative work done in the evening.
This podcast isn't meant to be a book review podcast, but I hope that everybody that's listening and watching this learns enough in the next 7 minutes before we end that they want to go out and buy the book and watch the movie and go to your website, because I'm going to do the same thing. I want to spend our final time talking about Savers, which is this 6-step process to create your Miracle Morning. You talked about it briefly. I'm going to pitch you each of these. You know them, you created them, and have you riff on them for a moment. Okay, Savers, SAVERS, silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. Let's start with silence.
Yeah, so the idea that starting your day, most of us, based on our smartphones, the pockets of time we used to have where there was just quiet, whether you were waiting in line at the grocery store or at the bank, or you were sitting around your house. Now that smartphone has robbed us of those moments of peaceful, purposeful silence. And it's during those times that we have our biggest breakthroughs, that we're able to reflect, that we increase our self-awareness, that we gain invaluable clarity. In fact, what got me to start meditating, and in full disclosure, silence was meditation in the beginning, but the M would have made the acronym awkward, MAVERS, right? So meditation became silence, which I like because it can be prayer, it can be meditation, it could be breath work, it could be reflection, it could be gratitude, right? But starting your day in this way, what got me to try meditation, which I thought was woo-woo, I read an article called Fortune 500 CEOs Who Swear by Meditation. And that was a paradigm shift. I always thought of meditation as like, monks in the monastery. And this article totally shifted my paradigm, going, these Fortune 500 CEOs say that their biggest breakthroughs and insights and clarity come during their period of meditation in the morning. So starting your day with that purposeful silence sets the stage for the rest of the day.
Savers, silence. The A is affirmations.
I think affirmations are the most misunderstood and the most effective, when done properly, form of personal development. The reason they're misunderstood is we've been taught to affirm this goofy, like, if you want to be successful or wealthy, just say, I am wealthy. You affirm something that isn't yet true. You don't really believe it yet, but you aspire to it. And to me, that creates an internal conflict. If you're struggling financially, for example, but some self-help guru, well-meaning self-help guru said, just affirm, I am wealthy. I am wealthy, right? Your internal conflict goes, this isn't true. So your affirmations have to be rooted in truth. And the other problem with affirmations, the way they're taught, is we're taught to affirm some magical result independent of any effort on our part. So we might say, I'm a money magnet. Money flows to me effortlessly, right? And that we all know that's not how money works, but that might give you temporary relief from your reality of money stresses and your money woes. It's like, well, if I tell myself I'm a magnet, it's magically going to flow into my life. That'll make me feel better in the moment. So affirmation should be rooted in truth. You should affirm, step 1, affirm what you're committed to. Step 2, affirm why it's a must for you. What are the reasons that you're committed to that thing, that outcome? And step 3, affirm which actions you'll take and when. And when your affirmations are rooted in truth and aligned with what you want, why you want it, and what specifically you need to do and when you're going to do those things, now you have affirmations that focus your conscious behavior and program your subconscious mind to increase the commitment you need to follow through.
In fact, you write that these affirmations are also about reprogramming your mind to overcome fears or negative mindsets or obstacles. Gosh, if there's anything I've learned from our 450 guests, it's how much of everything we do is driven by fear. Fear of failure, fear of people judging us, fear of lack of, believing in ourselves. Much of these affirmations are about manifesting what can be true, but also helping you overcome your own limiting beliefs. Is that true?
Absolutely. And there's no wrong or right way to do an affirmation. I shouldn't say there's no wrong way. There's lots of wrong ways. I gave you a few of them. But that example I gave you, that's my favorite formula, that 1, 2, 3, affirm what you're committed to, affirm why it's a must for you, affirm which actions you're going to take. So for example, when I had cancer, all I cared about was surviving for my family. Nothing else mattered. And so I found myself, as you talk about, fear. I was in fear. What if I die? What if I leave my kids without a dad? What's that going to mean? What do I need to do now while I'm fighting cancer in terms of setting up my finances and making sure they're protected? There was so much. It was so overwhelming. And so what I love about affirmations is that you design them in writing, and then you can tweak them, you can edit them, you can iterate, so they are essentially perfectly aligned with what you need to think, believe, feel, and focus on. And so for me, I affirmed that I was committed to beating cancer no matter what. There was no other option. I had 5 reasons why. Step 2, affirm why it's a must. It was for my wife, for my kids, for my parents, for myself, and for humanity and the people that I could help by me sharing that story of overcoming my cancer. And then last but not least, it was what was I going to do and when? And I had a whole list of all the holistic practices that I would implement every single day, in addition to doing chemo, which to me was the minimum effort. But it was all the things I was going to do to detox from the chemo, to build my immune system, to heal my body. And so that affirmations formula, I believe it saved my life, because when I didn't focus on the fear, but I focused on what I was committed to, why it was a must, and what I needed to do, that aligned my faith that if I do these things, it's inevitable. I'm going to beat cancer. And that's exactly what happened.
To set up your miracle morning, Hal has created the Savers process. Silence, affirmations, and then V is visualizations.
Yeah, I won't go super deep in this. I'll just say this, that the world's greatest athletes don't just visualize winning the championship. That's what we've been taught, right? Visualization is just see the thing that you want as if it's already happened. Well, that tricks your subconscious into thinking it's a foregone conclusion if you don't also visualize the effort necessary to get to the outcome. So yes, visualize yourself achieving the goal. See it, feel it, let it inspire you to move forward. But the most important part of visualization is visualizing yourself doing the thing today, taking the action, and while you're visualizing, getting yourself in a peak mental and emotional state that will compel you, when it's time to take that action, to actually follow through with it. So when I wanted to run an ultra marathon, I hated running. So I visualized going for a run every day and visualize myself in a peak mental and emotional state by affirming that I was committed to running, why it was a must for me, getting myself, inspiring myself, compelling myself to go for the run, so that when the alarm went off on my phone that it was time to run, because of that visualization, or what I call mental rehearsal, I had already been there in my mind and body and spirit, if you will. And then it compelled me to get up, get my running clothes on, and head out the front door. And that's the power of visualization. You can apply it to any area of your life that you need to take action in.
Hal, was there a tipping point that took you, and I don't want to simplify it or minimize it, from literally selling cutlery to becoming one of the most influential thought leaders and authors in this space? I mean, was there a person? Obviously, there were some, challenges and triumphs. Do you attribute something in particular for changing your mindset, or did you always have this mindset? That was a necessary journey for you to come to write this book?
Part of the mindset was from my mom and dad, in terms of turning, your adversity into helping other people. So that seed was planted when I was young. But a big part of this was when I started selling Cutco, I was 19. It was a year and a half for the car accident. And my mentor, Jesse Levine, who hired me to sell Cutco, who trained me, who believed in me, who supported me, who held me accountable, he is the person that taught me about the power of positive thinking. He's the person that recommended the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and a host of others. So he shifted my mindset. But then the car accident, when I came out of the coma, the doctors thought I was in denial because I was so upbeat and positive. They thought I was delusional or in denial. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm not delusional. It's just that I can't change that this happened to me. And I learned in Cutco to not wish you could change things that are out of your control, whether that's a customer canceling an order or being in a car accident. I said, and I've always wanted to be a professional speaker, Dad, ever since I started speaking at Cutco events. But I've had a normal life. You and Mom were good to me. I've never gone through anything major. Maybe that's why this is happening. Maybe I'm supposed to overcome this car accident, learn to walk again, and then go share that story and that message with other people. And so that was it was the combination of my mom and dad approaching my sister's death by helping other people, having a mentor that taught me the power of positive thinking and discipline and focus from Cutco. And then the car accident was that pivotal moment where I went, I'm going to combine all of that from my parents, my mentor, to help as many people as I possibly can.
Let's finish off. ERS, exercise, reading, and scribing.
Exercise, you don't need to go to the gym in the morning, but it's the idea that you move your body. I mean, literally, it could be 60 seconds of jumping jacks after you've woken up and maybe done some meditation that will get the blood and oxygen to your brain so you have more mental clarity and more physical energy. The R is for reading, right? And it's not rocket science, but we're all one book away from transforming any area of our life. I'll give you a little bonus tip. We often say, us, entrepreneurs and business people, family's my top priority. But if you look at your schedule, it might not tell the same story. One little self-imposed rule that I have is I have to read a book on marriage or parenting before I crack open the latest business book that I am reading, right? And that just reminds me, this is my number one priority. And it ensures that I learn something that I can apply that day to be a better dad or to be a better husband. And the final S is for scribing, which is a fancy word for journaling, but like meditation, it didn't fit in the acronym. And so scribing is writing down. For me, it's number one, I write down what I'm grateful for, and I pause and put my hand on my heart and close my eyes and allow myself 30 to 60 seconds of feeling deep, heartfelt gratitude for that thing, that person. And then I write down, I look at my to-do list, and this is the transition from my miracle morning to a productive workday. I look at my to-do list, and it's usually got 20 things on it, sometimes more. And I go, okay, what's the number one thing on this list? Not the easy thing that I would normally gravitate toward. What's the number one thing that will move the needle in my business the most? I am committing, and I write it down, to get that done, to earn the right to move on to, and I find number two and then number three. And that simple act of scribing, clarity of prioritizing my schedule, enables me to increase my productivity significantly. The last thing I'll say is any one of those 6 practices is life-changing, but when you combine all 6, you experience, not to be woo-woo, but miracles, results that are far beyond what you thought were possible, not because you're just focusing on trying to get results, but you're focusing on putting yourself in a peak state in the morning, learning, growing, and evolving and becoming a better version of who you were when you went to bed the night before, so that you're more capable of creating the results that you want in your life and in your business.
Hal, I try not to turn these interviews into my own therapy session, but I think I'm enough alike enough people to where sometimes my own vulnerability can help a few. I don't live in the past. I live in the future. And that part of that is because probably my energy, a little bit of anxiousness, probably driven by fear. I live in the future, but as a result, I don't often live in the present. I'm rarely present. Unfortunately, regret is not even in my lexicon. I do not live in the past. Like you, I control what I can, release what I can't. To what extent is living in the present and or living in the future relevant to your miracle morning and perhaps how you have triumphed over your own adversity?
I love that question, Scott, because I love it. To me, it provides a frame, at least internally for me, which I'll try to make external right now, which is the idea that, to me, the miracle morning, it's the best of both, right? So when I'm in my silence and I'm meditating and I'm present to this moment and what I have to be grateful for, right? I'm in the moment. I'm totally present to now. When I'm affirming what I'm committed to, why it's a must for me, right now I'm looking toward the future. I'm visualizing what I need to do today, right? So I'm not too far in the future. I'm seeing what I want, affirming what I want, but I'm visualizing what I need to do today. And so on and so forth. All of those practices, it's a blend of bringing you in the moment realizing that this is not just about me trying to move toward the future. It's about me becoming the person. That to me is what the Miracle Morning is. It's a daily practice to become the person that you need to be today to create what you want tomorrow and into the future.
Because I live in the future, I'm tempted to ask you what's next. I'm going to. It feels like your book has only just begun to hit, a tipping point. It's interesting. I interviewed Malcolm Gladwell a few weeks ago. And Malcolm Gladwell, of course, wrote, many seminal books. And he's mentioned that it was 4 years after he wrote The Tipping Point when he wrote Blink. Blink was his second big book that ignited the impact of The Tipping Point. 4 years. It's been almost 10, is that right? Since you wrote?
For Miracle Morning?
Yeah.
11. We had our 11-year anniversary in December.
11 years. So, you still are well on your way to having massive impact. In concurrent with the Miracle Morning, is there something else on your horizon that you might share with our listeners and viewers?
Yeah, there's a lot, but I'll try to minimize. The Miracle Morning app is probably it's the focus right now. So the number one thing we had requested for the last more than decade in the Miracle Morning, the community, members of our community is, Hal, can you make an all-in-one Miracle Morning app that facilitates all 6 of the savers? Because right now people would say, I'm using 6 apps. I have a meditation app and an affirmations app and a visualization app, and I got the exercise app, and I got, I'm using my Kindle app for reading, and I've got a journaling app. And so that was a huge undertaking to create the all-in-one app, but that's what we did. We launched it. It's been now over a year, 2 years ago probably. But the impact of that, people say, man, I read your book, Hal. I did the Miracle Morning. I kept it up for 4 months or 6 months or 2 months or whatever, and it was the best time in my life. But I didn't have anything to hold me accountable. And so now this app is the easiest way to complete a Miracle Morning because you literally can hit play and it guides you through an entire Miracle Morning. You can choose a 6-minute Miracle Morning or a 10-minute or however long you want to do it. And then it allows you to hold yourself accountable and gamify your Miracle Morning. So a lot of our energy is going into the app. It has 5,000 reviews, 4.9 out of 5 stars. So we're going, okay, we know it's helping people beyond the book. How can we now scale that and help more people?
Hal Elrod, you are the author of the international bestseller, The Miracle Morning, now with sections about the miracle evening and the miracle life. The tagline is, the not-so-obvious secret, guaranteed to transform your life before 8 a.m. You're a class act. Thanks for joining us today. Your energy is contagious, if nothing else. Thank you, Al. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott.
And we'll see you back here next week for a new conversation on leadership.